May 27, 1981, Siberia. Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov is staring at a blinking red light. For him, this is no ordinary night. In fact, this will go down in history as one of the most important days since the dawn of civilization. As the seconds tick by, he knows that the fate of the world rests in his hands. If he makes the wrong call, he could trigger the apocalypse. But what exactly was going on? Well, let's rewind a few hours to get some context. Earlier that day, a Soviet spy satellite named Cosmos 1382 was orbiting over the United States. Its mission: secretly monitor activities of the Air Force and Navy. And today, it would detect something unbelievable. Near the American missile base in Montana, the satellite detected an infrared flash, which could only mean one thing: a potential nuclear missile launch. The Soviets had 5 minutes to respond, or else they risk losing hundreds of lives and possibly ending the world. The alarm bells were sounded, and every military officer went on high alert. Soon, Lieutenant Colonel Petrov was summoned to the command center where he would receive the report from the satellite. As he stared at the blinking red light, knowing that he had 5 minutes to make a decision, let's take a step back and understand his position. Petrov was a lieutenant colonel in the Soviet ground forces, and was working as the duty operations officer at the command center of the Moscow-based 48th Anti-Aircraft Brigade. His job was to monitor incoming reports and decide whether there was a real threat of attack. And now he was being told that according to their satellite, a missile had just been launched from American soil. This news was more alarming because it came just 2 months after the Soviet Union shot down a Korean Airlines flight carrying 269 people, including Americans. They did so claiming it was a spy plane, although this claim was later proven false. So with the tensions already high between the US and Soviet Union, this new report sent shockwaves through the Soviet leadership. Now, here's where things get interesting. You see, there were actually no missiles fired from the US. The infrared flash picked up by the satellite was nothing but a malfunction in the system. Despite this, the Soviet military was in a frenzy. They had just spent years preparing for this scenario. Mutually assured destruction or mad was the order of the day. Both the US and Soviet Union had thousands of nuclear warheads ready to strike. And in such a situation, even the smallest glitch could lead to the end of civilization as we know it. It was up to Petrov to analyze the data and determine whether there was a genuine threat. If it was a false alarm, he would have to inform his superiors and hope they would believe him. But what if it wasn't? He didn't have much to go on, but the stakes couldn't be higher. His decision could save countless lives, or it could start the biggest war in human history. He weighed his options, analyzing every detail and trying to predict the possible outcomes. Finally, he made his decision. Despite the pressure and the potential consequences, he decided not to report the alleged attack to his superiors. Instead, he decided to wait for more data before making any move. It was a risky decision, but it may have saved millions of lives. You see, if he had reported the false alarm, the Soviets might have launched a retaliatory strike, which could have led to a full-blown nuclear war. But why didn't he report it? Was he a hero, or was there something more to the story? Well, it turns out that Petrov's decision was based on common sense and a bit of skepticism. When he received the report, he knew that the satellite system had malfunctioned before and doubted the accuracy of the data. He also knew that a nuclear exchange would be devastating for both sides, and that there had to be a logical explanation for the infrared flash. After consulting with a few trusted colleagues, he decided to wait for more data before reporting the incident. This decision bought them time to investigate further and ultimately saved the world from a potential nuclear holocaust. But his moment of truth was not over yet. For the next few hours, Petrov worked tirelessly to verify the data and explore other possible explanations. He knew that his decision not to report the incident would be questioned, and he needed to be prepared. With the help of his team, he analyzed the satellite data and discovered that the infrared flash was not consistent with a nuclear missile launch. There were too many variables that didn't add up. Although the situation was tense, Petrov remained calm and focused on the task at hand. He knew that the fate of the world literally depended on his next move. After several hours of investigation, Petrov was confident that the data was inaccurate and there was no threat of a nuclear attack. He informed his superiors of his findings, and they agreed to stand down. The world was safe, at least for now. Petrov's actions that night made him a hero in the eyes of many. He had saved the world from nuclear war and prevented the deaths of millions of people. However, he never received official recognition for his actions. In fact, he was reprimanded for not following protocol and reporting the incident earlier. But despite the criticism, Petrov's actions were ultimately vindicated. In the years since the incident, Petrov has been hailed as the man who saved the world. His story is a reminder of the importance of critical thinking and the dangers of blindly following orders. He was a simple soldier who did his best to protect the world from nuclear war, and in doing so, he became a legend. But Petrov's story is not the only one. There's another story from the same time period that will leave you speechless. It's the story of Major General Gennady Buzevich and the passenger plane he accidentally shot down. It was September 1, 1983. when Buzovich was on duty monitoring radar signals as the commander of the Siberian Air Defense Sector. Suddenly, his radar operators alerted him about an unidentified aircraft flying over Soviet airspace, and when they tried to contact the plane, it didn't respond. This was unusual and concerning, as civilian planes always responded to air traffic control. Buzovich immediately ordered the plane to be tracked and intercepted. Minutes later, he received confirmation that the plane was indeed an intruder. It was flying towards the Soviet nuclear missile base in the area. Time seemed to slow down as he made the split-second decision to shoot down the plane. He knew that the safety of the missile base was at risk, and he had to act quickly. But little did he know that this plane wasn't an American spy aircraft. It was a civilian Boeing 747 full of innocent people. When the Soviet fighter jet fired on the Boeing 747, killing everyone on board, a wave of horror and disbelief washed over Buzovich. He had made a terrible mistake, and now 269 people were dead. The Soviet government was in a panic. They knew that they had made a terrible mistake, and they needed to do everything they could to minimize the damage. At first, they denied any involvement, claiming that the plane had strayed dangerously off course. They claimed that the plane posed a serious threat to the base and that Buzovich acted in self-defense. But as the world demanded answers, the Soviet government was forced to come clean. They admitted that the plane was carrying 269 people, including 131 Americans. This was a major embarrassment for the Soviet Union, and they tried to cover it up as best they could, but the damage was done. The US government used the tragedy as a propaganda tool to paint the Soviets as reckless and dangerous. Despite the tragedy, the Soviet Union paid out millions of dollars to the families of the victims and apologized for the accident. But no amount of money or apologies could bring back the 269 people who died that day. The shooting down of Korean Airlines Flight 007 was a tragic mistake that could have had even worse consequences. If the plane had been carrying high-ranking government officials, or if the Soviet Union had not admitted to the accident, it could have triggered a diplomatic crisis, or even a war. But instead, the Soviet government took responsibility and worked to resolve the situation peacefully. This was a major accomplishment for the Soviet Union, considering their history of secrecy and their tendency to blame others for their mistakes. In the end, the tragedy of Korean Airlines Flight 007 was a wake-up call for the Soviet Union. It forced them to improve their communication and coordination between military and civilian agencies. It also highlighted the need for better international cooperation and communication to prevent similar tragedies from happening in the future. The incident remains a dark chapter in aviation history, but it is also a reminder of the importance of accountability, transparency, and communication in preventing disasters. But what do you think? Do you think the Soviet military was right to mistrust the satellite data? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing videos. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.